Berakhot 17b. There is no breach that our faction of sages should not be like the faction of David, from which Ahithophel emerged, who caused a breach in the kingdom of David, and no going forth, that our faction should not be like the faction of Saul, from which Doeg the Edomite emerged, who set forth on an evil path, and no outcry, that our faction should not be like the faction of Elisha, from which Gehazi emerged. In our open places, that we should not have a child or student who overcooks his food in public, i.e., who sins in public and causes others to sin, as in the well-known case of it seems like they're claiming Jesus sinned, and according to the Bible, the New Testament, he didn't. Having cited a dispute with regard to the interpretation of a verse where we are uncertain whether the dispute is between Rav and Shmuel, or Rabbi Yohanan and Rabbi Eliezer, the Gemara cites another verse with regard to which there is a similar dispute. It is said, "Hear me, stubborn-hearted who are far from charity." Isaiah 46:12. While both agree that the verse refers to the righteous, Rav and Shmuel, and some say Rabbi Yohanan and Rabbi Eliezer, disagreed as to how to interpret the verse. One said the entire world is sustained by God's charity, not because it deserves to exist, while the righteous who are far from God's charity are sustained by force, as due to their own good deeds they have the right to demand their sustenance. And one said, the entire world is sustained by the merit of their righteousness, while they are not sustained at all, not even by their own merit, in accordance with the statement of Rav Yehuda said, that Rav said, as Rav Yehuda said, that Rav said, every day a divine voice emerges from Mount Horeb and says, the entire world is sustained by the merit of Hanina ben Dosa, my son, and for Hanina, my son, a kav of carobs is sufficient to sustain him for an entire week, from one Shabbat Eve to the next Shabbat Eve. And this exegesis disagrees with the opinion of Rav Yehuda, as Rav Yehuda said, who are the stubborn-hearted? They are the foolish heathens of Gova E. Rav Yosef said, know that this is so, as no convert has ever converted from their ranks. Similarly, Rav Ashi said, the heathen residents of the city Mada Mahasya are the stubborn-hearted, as they witness the glory of the Torah twice a year at the Kala gatherings in Adar and Elul, when thousands of people congregate and study Torah and Mass. Yet no convert has ever converted from their ranks. We learned in our Mishnah that if a groom wishes to recite Shema on the first night of his marriage, he may do so, and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel prohibited doing so because of the appearance of presumptuousness. The Gemara asks, is that to say that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is concerned about presumptuousness and the rabbis are not concerned about presumptuousness? Didn't we learn that they say the opposite? As we learned in a Mishnah, a place where they were accustomed to perform labor on 9th of Av, one may perform labor. A place where they were accustomed not to perform labor on 9th of Av, one may not perform labor. And everywhere Torah scholars are idle and do not perform labor. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, with regard to performing labor on the 9th of Av, one should always conduct himself as a Torah scholar. If so, there is a contradiction between the statement of the rabbis here and the statement of the rabbis there. And there is a contradiction between the statement of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel here and the statement of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel there. Rabbi Yohanan said, the attribution of the opinions is reversed in one of the sources in the interest of avoiding contradiction. Rav Shisha, son of Rav Idi, said, actually, you need not reverse the opinions, as the contradiction between the statement of the rabbis here and the statement of the rabbis there is not difficult. In the case of the recitation of Shema on his wedding night, since everyone is reciting Shema and he is also reciting Shema, he is not conspicuous and it does not appear as presumptuousness. Here in the case of the 9th of Av, however, since everyone is performing labor and he is not performing labor, his idleness is conspicuous and appears as presumptuousness. So too the contradiction between the statement of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel here and the statement of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel there is not difficult. There, in the case of the recitation of Shema on his wedding night, the matter is dependent upon his capacity to concentrate. And it is clear to all that he is unable to concentrate. Reciting Shema under those circumstances is a display of presumptuousness. But here, in the case of the 9th of Av, one who sees him idle says, it is because he has no labor to perform. Go out and see how many idle people there are in the marketplace, even on days when one is permitted to work. Consequently, his idleness is not conspicuous. May we return to thee, who reads. Mishnah. One whose deceased relative is laid out unburied before him is exempt from the recitation of Shema, from the Amidah prayer, and from the mitzvah to don phylak trees, as well as all positive mitzvot mentioned in the Torah until the deceased has been buried. With regard to the pallbearers and their replacements and the replacements of their replacements, those located before the bier who have not yet carried the deceased, and those located after the bier, those before the bier who are needed to carry the bier are exempt from reciting Shema, while those after the bier, even if they are still needed to carry it, since they have already carried the deceased, they are obligated to recite Shema. However, both these and those are exempt from reciting the Amidah prayer, since they are preoccupied and are unable to focus and pray with the appropriate intent. After they buried the deceased and returned, if they have sufficient time to begin to recite Shema and conclude before they arrive at the row, formed by those who attended the burial, through which the bereaved family will pass in order to receive consolation, they should begin. If they do not have sufficient time to conclude reciting the entire Shema, then they should not begin. And those standing in the row, those in the interior row, directly before whom the mourners will pass and who will console them, are exempt from reciting Shema, while those in the exterior row, who stand there only to show their respect, are obligated to recite Shema. Women, slaves, and minors are exempt from the recitation of Shema and from phylacteries, but are obligated in prayer, mezuzah, and grace after meals. Gemara. We learned in the Mishnah that one whose deceased relative is laid out before him is exempt from the recitation of Shema and other positive mitzvot. The Gemara deduces, when the corpse is laid out before him, yes, he is exempt. But when the corpse is not physically laid out before him, no, he is not exempt from these mitzvot. The Gemara raises a contradiction from a Bereta. One whose deceased relative is laid out before him eats in another room. If he does not have another room, he eats in the house of a friend. If he does not have a friend's house available, he makes a partition between him and the deceased and eats. If he does not have material with which to make a partition, he averts his face from the dead and eats. And in any case, he does not recline while he eats, as reclining is characteristic of a festive meal. Furthermore, he neither eats meat nor drinks wine, and does not recite a blessing before eating, and does not recite the formula to invite the participants in the meal to join together in the grace after meals, zimun, i.e., he is exempt from the obligation of grace after meals.